Chapter 1. After serving a 3-year sentence, I walked out of the prison. My husband was waiting for me outside with our son. "Let's go home." James patted our son on the shoulder. "Call your mom." "No way." Our 7-year-old son looked at me with disdain, snorted, and turned his head away. "She's just a mute who's been in prison. Aunt Jane is my real mom." "Dad, Aunt Jane is waiting for us at home. Let's go." James's face changed slightly and he pretended to scold him. "Don't talk nonsense." He quickly turned to explain to me. "Jewel, William is still young and doesn't understand. Don't take it to heart." I signed with my hands, looking puzzled. "Who are you?" James's face stiffened as he understood my sign language. "Jewel, what do you mean?" He tried to find a reasonable explanation for my words. "Oh, it's been 3 years. William is 7 now. It's normal you don't recognize him. William, go to your mom." Reluctantly, William pouted and stepped forward, muttering under his breath. "She was a mute already, now she's lost her mind too." I watched him for a moment, then shook my head and signed again. "Sorry, I really don't know you. And although I can't speak, my mind is perfectly fine." "You're very rude." William understood sign language as well. Hearing my words, he started crying loudly. "You're the rude one. Dad, let's go. We don't need her at home. I only need Aunt Jane, wah." He cried louder, sneaking glances at me, and seeing my indifferent expression, he cried even harder. James stepped forward to comfort him and looked at me with disapproval. "Jewel, William is just a child. Why are you arguing with him?" He paused. "I know what happened 3 years ago was my fault. If you're angry, take it out on me. It has nothing to do with the child or Jane. Now you're pretending to have amnesia, Jewel. Please stop making trouble, okay?" I felt a headache coming on. Do these two not understand what I'm saying? I really don't know them. Seeing my unmoved expression, James sighed helplessly. "Let's go home first. You need to rest after just getting out." James took me to a small 2-story villa. As soon as we opened the door, a sweet voice greeted us. "James, you're back." A beautiful woman walked out and William rushed to her, not even bothering to take off his shoes, and hugged her legs. "Aunt Jane, I missed you so much." Then he made a face at me. Jane stroked his head and smiled gently. "Didn't you just see me yesterday, you little rascal?" "Hi, Jewel. Long time no see." I was still observing the villa. James said I had lived here, but I couldn't find any trace of my presence. Seeing that I didn't respond, Jane's eyes turned red. "Jewel, are you still mad at me?" "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Whatever you need me to do to make it up to you, I'll do it." James looked at me with displeasure. "I've told you it has nothing to do with Jane. To welcome you home today, Jane prepared a huge meal and even skipped her own promotion celebration. What more do you want?" William ran over and started hitting me. Bad person, bad person. You made Aunt Jane sad as soon as you got back." The little boy looked small, but he was surprisingly strong. Caught off guard, I stumbled back several steps. I hit the sharp corner of the shoe cabinet, the pain making my face go pale. "Jewel." James came over to help me, but I pushed him away. Enduring the pain, I signed, "I don't know what you're talking about, but if you are really my husband and I come home from prison to find another woman in our house, with my husband and son siding with her, don't you think that's cruel to me?" James's face changed slightly, about to speak, but Jane interrupted. "James, what did Jewel say?" Facing her pitiful eyes, James's gaze flickered and he made up an excuse. "Nothing, let's just eat." I forced a smile, supported my aching back, made a not hungry gesture, and went to my room to pack my things. After dinner, James headed back to the law firm, giving Jane a ride to work. William played on the lawn. After a while, I suddenly heard the child's cries. Following the sound, I found William lying in the flower bed, holding his knee. Seeing me, he cried out, "It hurts so much." I rushed over. But suddenly, I felt the ground give way beneath me and I fell. There was a large pit here. Pain shot through my leg, possibly broken. My face turned pale, and above me I heard clapping and laughter. Looking up, I saw William standing at the edge of the pit, gleefully watching me. "Bad woman. Serves you right. You made Aunt Jane sad." He made a face at me full of malice. "You just stay down there." Humph. Chapter 3. I opened my mouth, my throat producing a hoarse sound, but I couldn't call William back. My own son. In my hazy consciousness, I vaguely recalled 3 years ago. Jane just made a mistake. What's wrong with you taking the blame for her? James said impatiently. Besides, even if you go to prison, it's only for 2 or 3 years. I'll help you get a reduced sentence. I stared at him in disbelief. Jane had stolen company secrets. If she was caught, she wouldn't just go to jail. She would be blacklisted from the entire industry. Even if I got out of prison with such a notorious reputation, which company would hire me? James, as a top lawyer, couldn't possibly be unaware of this. Yet he was willing to compromise his professional ethics to make me take the fall for Jane. With a pale face, I signed frantically. I will never take the blame for Jane. William is still so young. I can't leave him without his mother. I still remember the look in James's eyes at that moment. Cold and mocking. Jewel, you don't have a choice. He sighed almost indifferently, then took out his phone and dialed a number. James. Daddy. A familiar female voice came from the other end of the line. Jane was with my son. I turned deathly pale, staring at James. Didn't he say he was taking William to his grandmother's today? William, Daddy wants Mommy to help Aunt Jane with something. Do you think that's okay? Then I heard my 4-year-old son's voice. Yes, yes. I don't want the mute. I want Aunt Jane to be my mommy. His words struck me like a fatal blow. After that, the court proceedings and my entry into prison were all a blur. I didn't lose my memory. During the 3 years in prison, I made countless excuses for my son. He was only 4, easily influenced and deceived. But now William was 7. He should understand right from wrong. Yet he dug a trap to harm someone. The sky darkened and raindrops fell, soaking me completely. Like a pitiful drowned rat, I endured the pain and struggled to crawl out of the pit. Before I passed out, the last thought in my mind was, I'm done with this husband and son. Chapter 4. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. My left leg was in a cast. You're awake. I turned my head to see a girl about 12 or 13 years old standing by the bed, looking nervously at me. She bowed deeply. I'm sorry, it was my fault you fell into that pit. Young Master William told me to dig it, but I didn't know he was planning to trick you. I'm really sorry you got hurt. I shook my head. This wasn't her fault to begin with. But despite my reassurances, the girl felt immensely guilty and took care of me diligently for several days. She told me her name was Joy, and her father used to be the gardener for the James family before he passed away in an accident. Actually, I saw you 3 years ago, Joy said softly while feeding me porridge. That day, I was with my dad at James's house and saw you arguing with Mr. James. Even though you couldn't speak, it was clear from Mr. James's attitude that you had a serious conflict. I was taken aback. James and I rarely argued. 3 years ago, that must have been when James asked me to take the blame for Jane. We had the most intense argument of our lives. I clenched the blanket. Joy noticed my expression and became uneasy. Auntie, did I say something wrong? I shook my head and wrote on a piece of paper, It's not your fault. Thank you. Joy continued to take care of me for several days. Watching her gentle demeanor, my heart softened. One day when the doctor came for rounds, I finally asked about something that had been puzzling me. Despite being in the hospital for days, no one had asked about the payment. The doctor looked puzzled. Didn't your daughter pay for you? Didn't she tell you? I was taken aback. Although I had suspected, hearing it confirmed was still surprising. Joy had paid. Where did she get the money? During dinner, I found a chance to ask her. The girl blushed and smiled shyly. My dad left some money when he passed away. I used it to pay for your bills. After all, I was the one who dug the pit that hurt you. I patted her head and then transferred all the expenses back to her account. Joy waved her hands frantically. Auntie, it's my responsibility to spend that money. You don't have to. I smiled and wrote a message on a piece of paper. Joy, would you like to live with me? The girl's voice stopped abruptly. When I looked up, I saw her eyes were red like a cute little rabbit. Chapter 5. After being discharged from the hospital, I brought Joy back to my rented apartment, which was fully furnished. I gave Joy the guest room and told her to rest early, as we would go through the adoption process the next day. The next morning, I found that Joy was already awake. She had not only tidied up her bedroom but also made breakfast for me. I couldn't help but think about William when he was little. James and his parents spoiled William because he was their only grandson, raising him to be arrogant and unruly. He never did any chores and even had to be coaxed into eating. If things didn't go his way, he would throw tantrums and break dishes. I tried to correct his behavior, but James always protected him. After Jane came into the picture, William became even more uncontrollable, constantly talking about Aunt Jane. Mom, does it taste good? Joy's soft voice brought me back to reality. I smiled and gave her a thumbs up. We didn't have any clothes that fit Joy, so after finalizing the adoption paperwork, we went to the mall. As we passed a toy store, I noticed the longing in Joy's eyes. I couldn't help but smile. No matter how mature she seemed, she was still a child at heart. Come on, let's go in and take a look, I signed. Joy had been learning sign language these past few days. She was smart and had already picked up some basic hand gestures. I told her to choose whatever she liked. Suddenly, there was a commotion inside the store, and amidst the noise, I faintly heard Joy's voice. My face turned pale and I pushed through the crowd to get inside. Joy was sitting on the floor, her arm bleeding from a cut. When she saw me, she couldn't help but call out, "Mom?" I rushed to hug her, about to check her wound, when I heard a familiar voice. You called her Mom? I turned sharply and saw William standing not far away with a toy in his arms, his eyes filled with disbelief. James and Jane soon arrived after hearing the commotion. William, are you okay? I closed my eyes for a moment, then turned to Joy. Tell Mommy what happened. Joy wiped her tears. I was looking at that doll when he suddenly rushed over, grabbed it from me and knocked me down. I frowned and glared coldly at the three of them. This was exactly the kind of thing William would do. Little girl, don't say that. Joe, what are you doing here? James finally noticed me, a look of surprise crossing his face. I ignored him and focused on William. Apologize to Joy. I won't. William bristled like a porcupine. Why does this little brat get to call you Mom? I'm your real son. Chapter 6. I frowned deeply and looked at James. Is this how you're raising your son? Before James could respond, Jane eagerly jumped in to reprimand me. Jewel, you can't just ignore William's behavior because of a prank, right? Jane's eyes were red. William is still young. If you're upset, take it out on me. Hearing this, William immediately grabbed Jane's hand. Aunt Jane, you're the best. Not like that mute who can't even speak. His childish face showed a disdainful and proud expression. He spat at me. Oh right, now you're also a convict. Ignoring the pain in her arm, Joy stood up abruptly and rushed towards William. Don't talk about my mom like that. I didn't react in time, and Jane, who had been holding William's hand, instinctively let go as Joy lunged forward. The two children quickly turned into a rolling ball on the ground. By the time we separated them, Jane was crouching down, checking on William with a heartbroken look. William, are you okay? William's face was dark and he didn't speak, glaring at Joy and me. I noticed the bloodstains on Joy's white shirt, and in a panic my voice came out hoarse. Joy smiled and touched my face. I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry. Tears welled up in my eyes. More and more people gathered around, and because of Jane's earlier words, the onlookers started pointing at Joy and me. How can a mother be so heartless? Kids are always mischievous. Why is an adult holding a grudge against a child? She abandoned her own child but cares for someone else's? What's she thinking? I stood up abruptly and turned on my phone's translator. Prank? William, you deliberately had someone dig a pit to trick me into falling. Is that a prank? Do you know that I fell and fractured my bone, spending over a month in the hospital? During that month, did your so-called son come to see me even once? You know I'm mute and can't speak. It rained heavily those days. Did you ever think that if no one had found me, I might have been buried alive in that pit? William, do you think you can brush all this off as a prank? The mechanical female voice sounded almost comical as it articulated each word. But it left the surrounding crowd, including the James family, speechless. James looked at me in shock. After a moment, he lowered his head and grabbed William's shoulder firmly. Is what Mommy said true? His voice trembled. Did you really dig a pit to hurt her? James's expression was so frightening that William got scared. James understood everything now. His face was a mix of emotions, but Jane interjected. James, there must be some misunderstanding. William is too young to dig such a big pit. Her gaze subtly shifted towards Joy. William seemed to catch on and quickly pointed at Joy. It was her. She dug the pit. Joy froze in place. I stepped forward, shielding her, and continued using the translator. Trying to shift the blame? Not a chance. Jane, right? I may not remember a lot, but from what James says, we haven't divorced yet. You're quite bold to meddle in our family affairs. Your ambitions are pretty clear, aren't they? The crowd instantly turned their disdainful looks towards Jane. So she's the mistress? No wonder she's bullying the mute wife. The husband and son are siding with the mistress. That's disgusting. How does she even have the nerve to show her face? Jane panicked, grabbing James's arm with tearful eyes. James. James frowned. Jewel, don't say things like that. Jane and I don't have that kind of relationship. I remained expressionless, continuing to type into my phone. What kind of relationship? Your son just said he wants her as his mom. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder and more unpleasant. Jane's face turned red with anger. James's face was equally grim. He had never been publicly humiliated like this before. The three of them were about to leave in embarrassment when I called them back. I pressed the button on my phone. Medical expenses. The mechanical female voice said. Your son injured my daughter. James's face turned ashen as he transferred the money to me. William's cries echoed in the background. If you don't want me, I don't want you either. Chapter 7. I ignored them and bought the doll that Joy had picked out, then took her to the hospital to treat her wound. During the visit, Joy remained silent. That evening, I helped her bathe, worried that she might get her wound wet. The little girl finally couldn't hold it in any longer and looked at me with tearful eyes. Mom, I'm sorry for fighting with my brother today. I paused. Using sign language, I replied. He spoke rudely first, but you must not fight in the future, understand? Look like today, if you win you gain nothing and if you lose you get hurt. Joy nodded. I understand. I'll listen to you, Mom. I won't fight anymore. After Joy fell asleep, I received a message from James. William can't sleep. He's crying to see you. I quietly closed Joy's bedroom door and replied to James. What does that have to do with me? James replied quickly. He's your son. I scoffed. A son who calls a mistress mom and his own mother a convict? I don't need that kind of son. I don't remember. Mr. James, let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get a divorce. You owe Miss Jane an explanation. After sending that message, I turned off my phone. The next morning, I got up early to buy a pigeon from the market to make soup for Joy's recovery. Joy drank one bowl and asked for 2 more. I suddenly remembered the times I made soup for James and William. Cooking soup requires careful attention to the heat. If done right, it tastes great. I spent entire days off in the kitchen carefully making soup and then packed it in a thermos to send to James. Only to later find the thermos on Jane's desk. Thinking back, it was like feeding a good meal to a dog. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find James and William standing there. William sniffed the air and without waiting for me to speak, rushed inside with red eyes. Why did you make soup for that little brat? James was also stunned. I signed without expression. If I don't make it for my daughter, who else would I make it for? Then I turned to James. Did you come here today to sign the divorce papers? James stepped back in disbelief. Jewel, you really lost your memory? No, that's impossible. He shook his head, face pale, and grabbed my hand. Come with me to the hospital. Joy immediately ran over and hugged me. What are you doing? Leave my mom alone. She's my mom, not yours. William, in a fit, also clung to my other leg. Caught between the two, I felt helpless and let out a hoarse cry. Ha ha. Joy, go to school. Mom will be fine. Joy hesitated, but after seeing my sign language, reluctantly left with her backpack. James took me to the hospital, forcing me to undergo a full-body checkup. The doctor held a brain CT scan. Miss Jewel, there's a small blood clot in your brain which might be pressing on your nerves and causing memory loss. You should take her to familiar places to stimulate her brain and recover her memory. James looked devastated, mumbling to himself. How could there be a blood clot? The doctor continued. This clot likely formed after a severe blow to the head. Has she been injured in the past 2 years? James seemed to recall something and abruptly left the room. His voice, fragmented, came through the door. I could faintly hear words like prison and surveillance. I lowered my head, a hint of sarcasm in my eyes. For 3 years, James never cared about my life in prison. Now he was suddenly in a hurry. I touched the spot on my head where the blood clot was. It had been struck by a bench. Unable to speak, I was bullied by the other inmates. When direct confrontation didn't work, they resorted to covert tactics. I eventually fought back, holding one woman's head in the toilet despite the blow to my own head, refusing to let go until they stopped bullying me. From then on, I understood one thing. To avoid being bullied, you must be tougher than others. Chapter 8. James returned looking utterly defeated. On his phone, he had surveillance footage. It showed my clothes and food being thrown away, me being pinned to the ground and beaten until there was a pool of blood beneath me. He finally understood what I had endured over the past 3 years. As I stared coldly into his guilt-ridden eyes, I felt nothing. This wasn't enough. This wasn't nearly enough. In the following days, James would wait outside my apartment complex morning and evening. I completely ignored him. Jane, unable to find him, bombarded me with messages. I blocked her. The next day, I received a call from Joy's teacher, saying that a woman had taken her away. Panicked, I rushed to the school and checked the surveillance footage, recognizing the woman as Jane. I called the police while texting her. "What do you think you're doing?" Jane replied quickly, "Tell James to come see me or you'll never see that brat again." I saved the text and video evidence and then contacted James. He arrived promptly. When we reached the address Jane had sent, we found that she had taken not only Joy but also William. James's face was dark with anger. "Jane, what do you think you're doing?" Jane's face was twisted with madness. "The police came after me again. James, you have to help me." James's patience was wearing thin. "We dealt with that issue long ago. What madness are you spouting now?" Jane's lips trembled. "No, not that issue." While she was distracted, Joy stomped on her foot. Seeing this, William bit Jane's hand. Jane screamed in pain and the two children ran towards us. Joy's face was streaked with tears as she ran, shouting, "Mom, it's her. She killed my dad." I looked up sharply. James was equally stunned. Jane shook her head frantically. No, I didn't. James, I didn't kill anyone. It wasn't me." The police had already surrounded us and quickly subdued the hysterical woman. I hugged Joy tightly, my gaze icy as I looked at Jane. Some truths will always come to light. Chapter 9. The police took Jane away. From Joy, I pieced together the truth about what happened 3 years ago. Jane had stolen company secrets because she needed money. When she was exposed, she begged James to let me take the fall. But Joy's father overheard their discussion. Joy's father had once received my help, and on the day of the trial he planned to testify for me. But Jane pushed him down the stairs, causing his death. Without evidence, his death was ruled an accident. But Joy never believed it. My dad was holding her hair clip. That hair clip was part of a pear. After causing his death, Jane panicked and didn't realize she had lost one of her clips. Years later, when she kidnapped Joy to threaten me, Joy recognized the matching clip on Jane's head. Jane's murder was exposed, which also brought up the previous case. James's actions to protect Jane and make me take the blame were now undeniable. As a lawyer, he had broken the law and framed someone else. Not only was his professional reputation ruined, but he also faced prison time. The same fate he had given me, I would return to him. At the police station, I pressed a prenatal examination report against the glass. James's lips trembled. What is this?" I signed, "Our child." The report dated back to 3 years ago. "When you decided to send me to prison, I found out I was pregnant. Remember the surveillance footage where you saw me beaten and bleeding? Yes, that's when I had a miscarriage." James was in disbelief. I stood up and left. During the trial, due to the sequential nature of the cases, they were tried together. James and Jane stood side by side in court. When James saw Jane, he lost his mind, breaking free from the officers and attacking her. He kept cursing. "It's all because of you. You got Jewel imprisoned and caused me to lose my child. Haven't I been good enough to you? Why did you do this to me? Why don't you just die?" The officers struggled to pull him away. Jane spat at the delirious James, her face already battered and bloody. "Blame me? Are you insane, James? Who told me your mute wife wouldn't cause trouble and that it was fine to let her take the fall? Who said life with a mute wife was dull and tasteless? James, you're the shameless one. Now Jewel doesn't want you. Serves you right. Ha, she's forgotten all about you. If you want to die, die. Maybe then your wife will forgive you. Ha ha ha." Jane laughed maniacally, her face and mouth smeared with blood. I frowned and raised my hand to cover Joy's eyes, but she stopped me. "Mom, I want to see." Her eyes were red. I want to see the bad people punished and sent to hell. I patted her head. Meanwhile, James was limp, being dragged back to the defendant's seat. He kept mumbling, "Yes. It's my fault, all should die." When the judge pronounced the sentence, James closed his eyes. As a lawyer, he only said one thing: "I plead guilty." James and Jane were both sentenced. Leaving the courthouse, I met my lawyer. I smiled and signed, "Thank you." Zachary smiled back, also using sign language. "You're welcome." Zachary was someone I met in prison. He volunteered his time each month to give legal lectures to inmates. That's how I found out he provided legal aid to people like me. Some things we couldn't say, but he could speak for us. As soon as I knew I was getting released, I contacted Zachary. He had always had doubts about my case, and upon receiving my request, he immediately devised the plan to fake amnesia. This will lower their guard, making it easier for us to gather evidence. Jane, with her guilty conscience, might slip up if she thinks you've forgotten. And it worked. After clearing my name, I received several job offers. I accepted the one with the best terms. That evening, coming home from work, I found William waiting in the hallway. Since James and Jane were imprisoned, he had been living with his grandparents. I had no idea how he was doing. Seeing me, William stood up cautiously, his eyes bright. "Mom." At that moment, the door opened. Joy ran out excitedly. "Mom, I made dinner. Was work tiring today?" She stopped mid-sentence upon seeing William at the door. She hesitated and looked at me. I understood her meaning, hung up my bag and signed to William, "Come in for dinner."